This is Sky World News Review and Business Report with Philippa Hall.
These are the top stories. Israel's military and Palestinian leaders have united in condemning a former Israeli soldier who published images on Facebook showing her posing with bound and blindfolded Palestinian prisoners. The UN is warning that more than 3.5 million children in Pakistan could now be affected by waterborne diseases spread by the country's floods. And a German pop star has broken down in tears in court as she admitted having unprotected sex with 4 men while knowing she was HIV positive. Now let's cross to Summit TV.
Hello and good morning. I'm Jennifer Sue for Summit TV, and here's a look at how the bourses were last trading across the African continent. In southern Africa, Botswana's domestic index was trading 1/3% weaker. South Africa's all-share index gained 1/5%, and the LUSC in Zambia was down 0.39%. Over to West Africa, where Ghana's all-share gained 0.43%, Ivory Coast Composite was 1/3% firmer, and Nigeria's all-share gained 0.69%. Let's take a look at East Africa, where Kenya's NSE was up 0.83%, Mauritius Semdex was slightly weaker, and Uganda's Composite was 1.25% in the red. Taking a look at the currencies this morning, in southern Africa, $1 buys you 6.71 Botswana Pula, 7.26 South African Rands, and 4,890 Zambian Kwacha. Over to West Africa, where you pay 1.41 Ghanaian Cedi a dollar, just more than 503 Ivory Coast francs, and 148 Nigerian Naira for the greenback. And finally, in East Africa, you'll get about 78 Kenyan shillings for a dollar, 28.75 Mauritian rupees, and more than 2,185 Ugandan shillings for $1. What's making business news on the African continent? Well, Africa's third largest gold producer missed fourth quarter forecasts. Harmony Gold's also taken the knife to its production targets. The South African-based miner had been looking for 2.2 million ounces in financial 2012. It's now going for 2 million ounces. It's blaming the closure of unprofitable shafts earlier than forecast. South Africa's mines are getting deeper. Labor and power costs are also rising faster than inflation, and that's making extraction of gold less lucrative and more dangerous. Moving on to Nigeria, where the country's central bank has received bids for 4 of its bailed-out banks. It's not saying, though, which ones. But according to reports, 2 foreign institutions, several local banks and private equity groups are in the bidding process. Standard Bank and First Rand are among the South African banks that recently expressed interest. Nigeria was forced into a $4 billion bailout last year as toxic debt threatened the sector. Authorities gave rescued banks an opportunity to seek new capital. It warned that those failing to do so would have to be liquidated. Gabon has signed $4.5 billion worth of infrastructure deals. The West African country is trying to diversify its economy. Gabon's heavily reliant on crude for its foreign income, but local production there has been declining. It's now roped in Singapore and India to rebuild its economy. Among the plans, a $100 million special economic zone. Gabon's also to construct a $1.8 billion palm oil refinery. It plans to become Africa's biggest producer of the edible oil. Now let's take a look at news in brief. Zambia, Africa's largest copper producer, signed an agreement with 2 Chinese companies to build a 600-megawatt plant expected to cost $1.5 billion. Ethiopian inflation slows to an annual 5.7% in July. Namibia's consumer inflation quickened to 4.6% year-on-year in July. That's from 4.3% previously. Kenya's tourist arrivals rose to 483,000 in the first half of 2010. That's beating record numbers posted in 2007. And that's a look at your African business news. Reporting for Summit TV in Johannesburg, I'm Jennifer Sue. Now back to you at the Sky News Centre in London.
French daily Le Monde shows flood victims in Pakistan climbing a palm tree to escape the rising water. Pakistan is also on the front page of Spain's El País, which shows children queuing for food aid. Germany's Berliner Zeitung shows Angela Merkel introducing her new spokesperson. The London Independent leads with Tony Blair's pledge to donate millions of pounds from his forthcoming memoirs to the British Legion. And Jyllands-Posten has a survey showing that almost 50% of Danes believe immigration has been a positive thing for Danish society, but 55% think Islam is a divisive factor.
All right, let's have a little browse through the sports stories making the headlines in the papers now. The Mercury from South Africa says the Springboks will stick to a kicking game when they face New Zealand in the Tri-Nations. The same story in South Africa's Witness. The paper says the Springboks coach will change half of his team for the game. Kenya's Daily Nation leads with the 5 basketball club competition. They picture Co-op Bank taking on Strathmore University. The Golf News pictures Vrinder Sehwag on his way to hitting 99 not out and helping India beat Sri Lanka by 6 wickets. The National from Abu Dhabi says even though Arsene Wenger has signed another deal with Arsenal, he now has to bring in the trophies. The Daily Mail from the UK pictures Dimitar Berbatov celebrating his goal for Manchester United against Newcastle. And The Guardian again from the UK has the same story. The paper says that despite the win, Man U were short of their best. I'll be back in just under half an hour with these sports headlines, but I leave you with the Africa weather forecast.
Eastern coastal parts of Tanzania will catch the odd shower today, and it'll also be pretty breezy. There'll be cloud around for much of Mozambique too, and the Seychelles will be showery. Highs for Port Victoria of 29 degrees Celsius. For much of the south, though, it'll be a settled, dry and fine day. Around the Western Cape, it'll be bright with highs for Cape Town of 19 degrees Celsius. Across the central region, the seasonal showers are set to continue as the heat of the day builds, with winds pushing in from the west. Ethiopia will see some particularly heavy downpours, highs for Addis Ababa of 20 degrees Celsius. You're watching Sky World News on the website skynews.com. Economic shift: why Japan is no longer Asia's main powerhouse, and coming up, the battle commence, a neck-and-neck election forecast in Australia, and weather warning: why Russia could soon be waving goodbye to its heatwave.
Hello again. Let's have another look at the sports headlines now. And Manchester United have made a winning start to the new Premier League season. They beat newly promoted Newcastle 3-0 at Old Trafford. There were goals from Giggs, Berbatov and Fletcher. The US Ryder Cup captain Corey Pavins once again hinted he'll pick Tiger Woods for his team. Woods failed to qualify automatically when he finished 28th at the US PGA Championship this weekend. And Australia cricket captain Ricky Ponting says not only can Australia regain the Ashes this winter, but they can beat England 5-0 in the process.
This is Sky World News. Now let's take another look at some of our top stories.